We drop in on a transaction where some Serbians are trying to sell fake passports. The buyer is James, an undercover cop. James is hesitant to make the deal. He wants to make sure that the deal has been greenlit by the mysterious crime boss who goes by the name Omar. James puts the sale on hold until he can get face-to-face approval from Omar himself. As the parties leave, the Serb gets a text message that he's being set up. Cops jump out, pointing with their guns. Bullets start to fly. The Serb jacks a ride from a valet and pulls off. James is right behind him. The high-speed chase is on. There's some gunplay and explosions. James catches up to the perp and manages to flip his car. That's a lot of damage over some fake passports. Ben and his online buddies are platinum-level combat gamers. A nice pair of thighs that belong to Ben's girlfriend, Angela, interrupts the mission. Angela sabotages Ben's game, bringing his game life to a brutal ending. Ben brings up the prospect of marriage. Angela tries to pin him down on the when and wheres of his marital plans. Ben is uncertain. This year, next decade, you can't hurry love. Ben wants to get his life straight first. Ben wants to be a cop like Angela's brother James. But James will not be an asset to assist Ben on his career path. James does not like Ben. He thinks Ben is spineless, brainless, heartless, and worthless. Also, there's the theme where Ben accidentally set James on fire in the past, so add on careless too. The following morning, James has been summoned to the office of Lieutenant Brooks. He's joined by fellow cops Miggs and Santiago. The lieutenant puts James on notice. Miggs and Santiago also aren't trying to lose their jobs over James either. We join Ben at his gig, a security guard at a grade school. During a recess, he finds out that he's been accepted to the Atlanta Police Academy. Ben and Angela return home after celebrating his good news. Before they can soak the sofa, James shines a light on the couple. Thinking it's an intruder, Ben panics and knocks himself unconscious. As Ben regains consciousness, Angela and James are going at it over her coming up short in the boyfriend department. After Angela kicks James out of her apartment, Ben follows. Ben tells James about his good news of being accepted into the academy. Since Ben now has a plan and a path, it emboldens him to ask James for his blessing to marry Angela. James assessed the situation, took out his gun, and shot Ben. Ben, he dead. It's a short film. Roll the credits, boss. It was James' imagination running away with him. James comes up with an idea. James tells Ben that he has to prove himself worthy of marrying his sister. James is going to test Ben's mettle during an on-the-job police ride-along. It's the next morning. Rise and shine, Cupcake. It's time for the ride-along. They arrive at the police department. James argues his case to the lieutenant that the Serbian to Omar connection is credible. He wants the lieutenant's okay to follow through with the investigation. James gets Ben to sign a waiver so that if shit goes upside down while they're out in the streets, Ben's going to take the weight. Before the ride-along begins, James visits the dispatcher. He tells her to give him all of the code 126s that come in. James and Ben roll out. Ben is already trying too hard to impress. Ben overheard the talk between James and the lieutenant about Omar. James reveals a little history about the crime boss. He talks about how Omar runs his operation from the shadows. No one knows what he looks like, and it's because he kills anyone who lays an eye on him. James is interrupted by one of those code 126 calls. James pulls up to the scene of the disturbance. It's a bunch of bikers loitering out front of an establishment. James tells Ben to get them to move. Ben is excited. He's ready for some Starsky and Hutch, Crockett and Tubbs, Benson and Stabler teamwork. But nah, James wants to see Ben do it on his own. You're on your own, playboy. Ben walks over to the bikers and starts off with niceties. A biker spits on his shoes.
Spit on that thing!
The culprit is a woman. What I'm trying to say is, basically, it's a woman with a dope-ass beard. When Ben guesses the gender incorrectly, the woman's husband takes offense. Ben tries to Alonzo his way out of a dicey situation, but the shit gets too thick. James comes over for the save. Back safely in the car, Ben is undeterred from his failure and is ready to press ahead. Santiago calls James with a tip about a guy named Run Flat. James arrives at the location. He tells Ben to hang back, but Ben is eager to assist. James relegates him to questioning the juvenile brother of Run Flat. Ben goes over to the little kid and in no time gets in over his head. The kid is getting the best of him in some back and forth short person insults, short jokes, one step above fart jokes. Meanwhile, James sneaks up on his target, Run Flat. Run Flat runs. It's in his name. Initially, Run Flat plays ignorant. But after James threatens him with the Popo's go-to move, i.e. police brutality, Run Flat's memory conveniently comes back. He tells James about an incoming shipment. Back on the playground, Ben is getting resistance from the kid who refuses to give up information on his big brother who just returned home. A frustrated Ben puts hands on the child who begins to make all sorts of cries and accusations. Before them hood cats begin to take things into their own hands, Ben has to tuck tail and run. This time, Ben blames his failure on the lack of proper tools for the job. So James takes Ben to a shooting range. Ben's childlike enthusiasm is testing James' patience. He takes aim at the target and fires off shots. No hits. So Ben switches to a shotgun. Hand on the pump, left hand on a 40, puffing on a blunt. Out front, Ben starts to question the owner about guns that he's used while playing combat video games. He mentions Serbian weapons. The owner mentions that some Serbians had recently been in her shop browsing the inventory. The mention of Serbian gets James' attention. He takes the information and relays it to Santiago. James thinks that the Serbians, Omar, and weapons are linked. Santiago reminds James that Lieutenant Brooks told them to drop the Omar thing. Alright, James, don't lose your job on your day off. Ben wants James to be impressed that he brought about a break in James' case. James gives no love. Another Code 126 call comes in from dispatch. Ben and James arrive at a supermarket where a crazed man is screaming and throwing product at customers. Ben asks James to let him handle it. Ben makes his approach to Cody. Cody begins to lose his clothes and pours honey all over his body. When Ben tries to cuff Cody, tussle ensues. And Ben comes out on the short end. Not short in height, short on results. No short jokes allowed here. James watches as Ben is getting choked into a nap. He breaks it up and a defeated Ben walks away. The pair arrive at the police precinct and Ben's spirit is destroyed. James gives him the old, "Hey player, you gave it your best shot, but you ain't cut out for this shit." While alone in the car, Ben receives a call from Angela. She can tell that he's depressed. Ben begins to tell her about his bad day. He goes over the details. Then he mentions the Crazy Cody incident. Angela informs Ben that Crazy Cody is one of James' poker buddies. Ben begins to realize that James may have set him up to fail. Ben enters the precinct to confront James. He overhears Crazy Cody recounting the supermarket incident. James and his police buddies are laughing it up over Ben's incompetence. Ben feels embarrassed and betrayed by James. When James rejoins Ben to take him back home, a 126 call comes in. James tries to cancel it, but Ben stops him. Now knowing what he knows about James setting him up, Ben wants one more chance to prove himself. This 126 occurs at a strip club where the owner has ID'd a suspicious Serbian cat just hanging out like wet clothes. He's sitting in front of the stage, not tipping. Way too much staring without sharing. You got a tip for the script, playboy. You in Atlanta now. When James tells Ben to go call for backup, Ben thinks it's another prank. He disobeys and approaches the suspect. The Serb freaks out, draws his weapon, and grabs a dancer as a shield. Ben is amused at the presumed performance. James tells Ben that this ain't no joke, he's in a real situation. Ben doesn't believe him and raises the stakes by taking his unhinged behavior to another level. When the Serb starts firing real bullets, Ben screams like a girl. Eventually the dust settles and James apprehends the Serb. Lieutenant Brooks awaits. James wants credit for bringing down a bad guy, but the lieutenant is stuck on how badly everything could have played out. In addition, James is still yapping at Omar shit. Ben lets James know that he knows about the Code 126 calls. James lets Ben know that he ain't giving him blessings to marry his sister. He tells Ben to get in the car so he can take him home. Back seat. Santiago calls James and tells him that Run Flat has voluntarily booked a room in the county jail. James assumes that it's because Omar is cleaning up loose ends in the streets. Santiago recommends that they get off Omar's trail for now, especially if Omar is out here collecting heads. James hangs up. He makes a comment about Run Flat going back to jail after being out for 2 years. But this contradicts with the intel that Ben got from his little brother. James figures out that the kid must have been talking about his other brother who used to be Omar's driver. James makes a detour to visit that brother's old hangout spot. They arrive at a pawn shop and march towards the back room. There they find the other brother, Jay. After failing to escape, Jake vows that he's not giving them anything. Jane begins to apply pressure to Jay. Ben, who has now acquired a gun, turns up the pressure on Jay. In Ben's excitement, he accidentally fires a bullet into Jay's shoulder. James, temporarily stunned by Ben's careless actions, continues to play along. He tells Jay that he has no control over his crazy partner. Jay gives up the location of a warehouse where the deal is going down. James calls Santiago and gives him the location with instructions to have backup meet them there. James and Ben arrive at the location, and once again, Ben doesn't want to sit this one out. James tells him that he needs real police to back him up this time. James approaches the building as Miggs and Santiago wait. Backup is nowhere to be found. Learning that Omar may be inside, James makes the call to go in without backup. As they open the doors, Miggs and Santiago turn their guns on James. See, they with them, player. James is miffed that his partners are working for Omar. They tell him that Omar's money has more weight than their police salaries. Ben gets restless and gets out of the car. When he looks through the window of the warehouse, he sees James done got caught up. Santiago mocks James over his grim fate. A voice speaks out from the dark. It's Ben, pretending to be Omar. He begins to grandstand as if he's the mysterious, faceless crime boss. Ben doesn't fit the myth of the feared gangster, so the parties begin to doubt him. Ben shoots one of the men in the leg as a warning for doubting him. Ben then turns his attention to the restrained James. He collars off and slaps James across the face. Gotta make it look real. Santiago asks fake Omar to give them a taste of what's to come for James. Ben takes a knife and applies some baby stabs to James' chest. Ben cuts James free and begins to take him away to finish him off. Then another voice comes from the shadows. A man approaches, correcting Ben's erroneous rants. That man is Omar, the real Omar. Uh-oh. Real Omar makes quick work of fake Omar. James finally comes face to face with the man that he's been chasing for years. Omar admires the dogged determination that James showed in his pursuit. He offers James a position in his operations. With Santiago egging him on, Omar awaits an answer from James. James uses the criminals' inherent distrust of one another to create a distraction to escape immediate threat. James and Ben get cover and a shootout begins. Ben goes into gaming mode to overcome his fear and gain focus. While not being the best gunman, Ben does bring valuable gaming knowledge that helps with the real-life combat. He knows to scan the area for extra clips. He can identify the types of weapons being fired by ear. Plus, he knows the fuse time of a live hand grenade. Well, the grenade toss created a bigger problem. The place is filled with explosives. One explosion quickly becomes exponentially worse. The two run for the exit, but not before Ben grabs the bag of money. They make it out and wait for the big kaboom. There it is. With James' car being destroyed, the two men have to foot it. Ben notices that his clothes are wet. James identifies that Ben took a bullet during the shootout. Ben begins to go into a self-induced shock. James is going to have to get him to the hospital. He calls in to the lieutenant for some assistance, but word has already gotten out to the lieutenant. The lieutenant tells James to turn himself in, as the word on the street is that James is a crooked cop. With the word out that he's the crooked cop, James breaks the news to Ben that they're going to have to move without the assistance of the police. James manages to get Ben to the hospital, where he's given a dosage of pain meds. Back at Angela's place, she has donned the headsets and is engaged in video combat along with Ben's gaming buddies. She's interrupted by Miggs and Santiago at her door. She lets them in, fearing that something has happened to her brother. Omar reveals himself to be in company with the two crooked cops. They tie up Angela and begin to interrogate and threaten her. As this is going on, the live gaming headset is sitting on the table, broadcasting everything to the gaming teammates. Back at the hospital, James admits to Ben that he misjudged him and that Angela is capable of making her own decisions. Ben's phone rings and James answers. It's the gamers. They tell James that something bad is going down at Angela's place. James jumps to action and begins to head out. A drugged up Ben insists on joining him. Along the way, threats are thrown back and forth between James and Omar. Omar wants his money back. James tells him that he has it and he's 30 minutes away, but actually they're right around the corner. They approach the apartment and Ben crashes through the window, completely missing Omar. Omar begins to toss Ben around, but drugged up Ben can't feel any pain. He's like a black doped up Wolverine. Meanwhile, James and Santiago are throwing punches with James coming out on top. Santiago raises up and puts a hot one into James' shoulder. As he prepares to finish James off, Angela comes to the rescue, knocking Santiago out cold. Omar snatches Angela's narrow ass, his words, not mine, and escapes. James pursues them out of the window and down the fire escape. When he catches up to Omar, instead of Omar running and shooting, he begins to do that old boasting that the villain does in movies. James agrees to join Omar's organization if he lets Angela go. But it's too late for that. Omar's new deal is for James to put down his weapon and watch him leave with Angela. James declines. Sure you don't want to reconsider, player? As Omar awaits James' next move, Angela's trying to play all tough and shit with a gun to her head. James spots Ben crouched behind a car outside of Omar's line of sight. The two connect on the non-verbal signal for the next move. With Omar's attention diverted, Ben flies across the car, landing his best video karate kick, knocking Omar to the ground and freeing Angela. As Omar rises to his feet, James shoots him down. Omar, he dead. No, he ain't. He's just in a cockroach position. The lieutenant shows up and congratulates James on finally catching his white whale. James goes over to Omar just to let him know that he'd never team up with him. Angela asks her brother, since Ben came through in the end, does he now give him his blessing? The most that James is prepared to give is an acknowledgement that they didn't get killed. But that's good enough for Ben. Take what you can get. Fast forward. Angela is showing off the engagement ring on her finger. James is guarding the grill from Ben, who we learn is about to graduate from the police academy. And in a what goes around comes around moment, this time it's Ben who gets burned at the grill due to his carelessness.